thank you everyone for being here. I try to get this out on social media. I know some people are doing the survey online, so really appreciate you being here in person. And this is such an important endeavor for us, as you've probably already heard about Build Up Aurora over the past year. We are looking to fund a lot of different capital projects. So tonight, of course, as Laura said, is going to be about transportation projects. There's another one Saturday, I think, that is going to focus more on public safety. And so tonight our staff is going to be presenting just the different projects that we're considering, and we want you to participate and then rank what you think is a priority. So just thank you again for being here, and more to come.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Bergen. Okay, so we have a short presentation to kick off tonight's evening. We're going to walk through our Build Up Aurora process to date, talk to you about our various transportation needs in the city and how these needs have been combined to be presented to you today, what led us to this place. And then our community engagement team in Housing and Community Services will be leading a prioritization exercise where we are going to be asking you to give us your top priorities. So to kick us off tonight, just a short video describing what infrastructure is.
Hey Siri, what is infrastructure? Infrastructure is the set of facilities and systems that serve a country, city, or other area. The City of Aurora's infrastructure is the building blocks that impact quality of life. It's roads and sidewalks, public safety, parks, libraries, recreation centers, and accessibility. Having safe, adequate, and well-maintained infrastructure is essential to Aurora's economic health and impacts every person who lives and works in the city. Hey Siri.
So that is a visual depiction of what infrastructure is. Now we're going to get a little bit more specific about what we're focused on tonight. So in the city, we define how we spend our money between two areas. We have operating expenses and we have capital expenses. Tonight, we're here to talk about capital investments. So capital investments involve the city's physical infrastructure. So think roads, parks, and buildings. These involve projects, sometimes that take multiple years, so major new construction, major renovations can take a couple of years from design through construction, but also it involves new infrastructure construction. So it's really focused on what's built in the city. On the operating side, those are the services and operations that the city does on a day-to-day basis. So our programs, our snow removal off of our streets, those are considered services that the city provides. The city also obviously pays for the staff that provides those services. Any supplies and equipment is in our operating budget. And then day-to-day maintenance. So the city maintains all of its facilities, and we invest in things like filter replacements and everyday preventative maintenance to make sure our buildings are with us and in service for as long as they possibly can be. This slide summarizes a snapshot of all of the different assets or infrastructure that the city has and maintains. So in the transportation space, we have over 4,300 lane miles, over 380 traffic signals, 98 bridges, some of our oldest ones we'll talk to you about tonight, and there's many more listed here that are continuing to come online every day as the city is growing. So going back to our budget conversation and how the city pays for things, focusing on capital and physical infrastructure, cities pay for capital projects typically in three different ways. One is through that annual budget. So within the city's annual budget, we have a capital budget which relies on revenues that are received every year to pay for things like roof replacements, street paving, and other major capital projects that the city needs to do on an annual basis. Next are grants. So the city routinely applies for grants to pay for large infrastructure projects. These grants are competitive, and there's no guarantee that the city will receive them, but the city has had a lot of success in applying for grants and leveraging what we fondly call other people's money to pay for infrastructure needs. But that certainly is not a sustainable tool for cities. Last are bonds. So bonds are like a mortgage on a home. So when you buy a new home, you borrow money from a financial institution. And every month you make a mortgage payment to pay off that loan or that mortgage. That mortgage payment is covered by income that you receive. And so bonds work the same way. The city borrows funds for major projects, and every year the city has an annual payment that it has to make plus interest, and the city's revenues have to cover the cost of that annual payment. The one notable attribute about bonds is that they require voter approval. So in the state of Colorado, we have something called TABOR, or Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and that requires that all bonds are approved by voters. And when that occurs, the city asks for the populace to approve borrowing a certain amount of funds to pay for specific projects. And that is a contract between the city and its voters or its residents, in that the city has to deliver what those projects are that the voters vote on. There's a positive to this in that it allows the city to deliver projects sooner and address some major capital project needs that the city can't afford to do in its annual budget. So over the last couple of years, the city has invested in comprehensive capital master planning efforts to understand the city's capital needs, as well as engage with the public on what the public's priorities are in each of our respective areas. So this sundial shows each of the master plans that the city has completed over the last couple of years, each of which has involved substantial community touch points, as well as an analysis of infrastructure needs, its condition, and growth in the city, and what infrastructure is required to keep up with our growth. Those capital master planning efforts has resulted in a draft 10-year capital plan that totals $1.9 billion in capital needs of all of the various capital projects that have risen to the top. And obviously the city cannot afford $1.9 billion, and a lot of these projects, majorities of these projects, exceed what the city can afford to do in their annual budget. So for example, tonight you'll hear about a couple of bridges that need to be replaced. The average cost of a bridge replacement is about $30 million. And obviously the city does not have that in its budget or in our pay-as-you-go funds. So we have taken a concerted effort to look at our infrastructure needs and develop an infrastructure strategy to begin to try to address as many of these needs as possible. That started with a critical conversation in 2022 that looked at our residential streets in the city. Residential streets had gone unpaved for several years. And as a result of that, the condition of our streets dropped dramatically. That this required a look at the current condition across the city, an evaluation of the streets in the worst condition, and how much that's going to cost the city to be able to catch up and then keep up on residential paving. So our former councilmember Dustin Zavonik sponsored a ordinance to bring forward the borrowing of $35 million, and that was through an instrument called a certificate of participation. We have a board here that talks a little bit more about those tools. But that allowed the city to borrow $35 million, catch up on those streets in the worst condition, and then going forward, we've been able to budget in the annual budget the paving of residential streets. So we have a 5-year plan that we follow. One thing to note about pavement, we have a slide that talks a little bit more about this in a couple, but pavement, we measure condition, and that's a really important metric and something we measure against, and we've seen a great gain in that. I talked a little bit about the federal grants and state grants. So also in 2022, we had the federal infrastructure bill come through. So we took a really hard look at that, and we did a matchmaking exercise. So we took a look at our decades-long transportation needs, and we said, okay, what's the best fit? And where can we be most competitive and successful in trying to apply for grants? And through that, we were successful. We have received lots of design monies to get a lot of the projects you see on the back wall that we'll talk to you about in a few, under design and ready for construction. So the city has had a lot of success in applying for grants. And that brings us to where we are today. So last year, we started an education and engagement campaign called Build Up Aurora, where we talked to the public and about infrastructure needs, our financial means, and limited ability to afford a lot of our infrastructure needs, our growth. And through that led to a conversation with council that resulted in unanimous approval of the creation of an infrastructure task force. And that infrastructure task force is co-chaired by Councilmember Curtis Gardner and Councilmember Francois Bergen. And this slide shows those who sit on our infrastructure task force. And this group is tasked with evaluating the city's infrastructure needs and identifying short and mid and long-term solutions to address those needs, all while hearing community input, which is why you all are here tonight. This is a visual representation of our process to date. We've spent the last year at the Infrastructure Task Force presenting on project needs, actually in each of the focus areas that we have our ranking roundups focused on, and have engaged a lot of conversation about our project needs, our master planning efforts, what we've heard from the public to date, as well as the city's finances in our annual budget and ability to afford some of these needs. We also had a lot of engagement in the last year. I'll have a slide on that talks to you about what we heard, but received a lot of great feedback from that has really shaped the projects and that $1.9 billion list that I showed on the previous slide. This will all come together with the Infrastructure Task Force, who will be making a recommendation to City Council in May at our winter workshop. So I mentioned the public outreach that the city did. So we've had a lot of touch points with the community through a variety of means. We really tried to meet folks where they were. So we attended festivals, flagship events, service clubs, HOA meetings. We really tried to get out there and engage as much as we could to understand the community sentiment on infrastructure. We had over 3,500 plus direct interactions, over 2,600 survey responses, many facilitated conversations, and also a social media campaign to solicit as much feedback as possible. This resulted in 3 major themes and concerns that we heard across all of those means of gathering the information. So first is public safety. And that's not just in the traditional police and fire response frame. We did hear a lot about that. It was also transportation safety. So sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, signals. We heard a lot about roadway improvements and the need to mitigate congestion. We call that also traffic calming when it comes to speeding in our neighborhoods. So there were a lot of concerns that we heard in the public safety space for transportation. And then of course next is transportation infrastructure. So the need for roadway improvements, having well-maintained and safe roadways across the city. Transit did come up in this conversation as well, sidewalks, etc. And then last, parks and recreation. So folks want to have access to parks, want their parks renovated, and want to have new recreation amenities that are adjacent within the city to support their neighborhoods. So now, that ends the educational portion of the presentation for the process. And we're going to pivot to the projects themselves. So in a moment, Public Works is going to come up and walk you through each of the projects that comprise the transportation needs list that's being presented to you today. And as you're listening to the projects, I'm going to ask you to think about which projects resonate most with you and answer the question, do these projects reflect the critical needs of my neighborhood and the city as a whole? And so as you're doing that, take notes. We have little identifiers. I'll show you that in a second. But that is really why you're here tonight. We want to hear that from you. And your feedback greatly matters because we will be taking this and bringing it back to the Infrastructure Task Force to help shape the 10-year capital plan as well as the recommendations that they're going to be making to City Council. So now jumping into the specifics, I talked a little bit about the Transportation Master Plan. So the city is about to complete its first multimodal transportation master plan. This has been very exciting for us. It has involved extensive community outreach over the last 2.5 years. And actually, we received a grant from Dr. Cog, which is our transportation our organization that we receive funds from. And we were really fortunate to do this because what this plan does is it sets a vision for the city for pedestrian, freight, transit, and vehicular traffic. Will guide future design and transportation projects, programs, and policies, and all of which will come together to deliver a safer and more convenient way to travel for the city. And a lot of the projects you're going to hear about tonight are included in this master plan that we heard a lot of feedback on from the public. We had over 800,000 touch points with the community and over 2,500 survey responses just for transportation through Connecting Aurora. But you see the common theme here with the visual is safe. Lots of concerns about safety in transportation, and also folks want to travel safely and feel safe when traveling, no matter what mode they are using to travel. From our own Build Up Aurora survey results and facilitated conversations, over half of folks in facilitated conversations provided transportation project ideas and project needs. So it was obviously very popular. And then in our survey results, similar to what I mentioned earlier, same thing, safe and maintained roadways are what folks value most in their neighborhood. To make folks feel safer in their community, they want to see repairs to out-of-date roads, upgraded sidewalks to improve pedestrian safety, better and more bike routes and bike ways, and then roadway expansion and capacity improvements where congestion is severe. This slide shows where we were on Build Up Aurora's residential paving program. So the red area represents the amount of deferred maintenance and gap that we were seeing on our residential streets. So when I talked about the need to catch up earlier with the 35 million, this visual represents what we were looking at that point in time, and it had been over about 14 years since the city had paved residential streets, and that was notable. So I talked about we issued 35 million. We were able to program work going forward. And then from the condition standpoint, so routinely, Public Works sends out a really fancy machine to go measure all the streets in the city about every 5 years. That gives us a numeric rating for each street and tells us, is it in good condition, is it in fair condition, or is it just terrible and it's poor and it completely needs to be reconstructed? So, at the time, when we started this conversation, it was 69, which, as you can see here, we were fair across the entire city. In 2009, we were at 77, which put us in good, which is about a good benchmark for cities. It's typical for a city for good condition. I am so pleased to say that today, after concerted efforts by Public Works on understanding our street condition, hearing from residents, we are at a pavement condition across the city of 79. So we went from 69 to 79, and so we are at the very high end of good, and the goal that council set at the time was 73. So we've exceeded the goal, and we're continuing to address all of our as many residential streets as we can in a given year based on condition. But that's having certainly an impact citywide, and it's something, it's a promise that we made to our residents that we've fulfilled. So this slide represents all of the projects you're going to hear today. Just lay of the land on this. Kurt Mullenmeyer, our Public Works Director, will walk you through each project. But you'll see here there's a number key where it serves as an identifier for each project. So don't feel like you have to write the entire name down. I know you guys have a key in front of you as well, but these numbers also match numbers on the slide to make it a little bit easier for folks as you're thinking through what your highest priorities are. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kurt to walk you through the projects.
Thank you, Laura. So as you need that too. As Laura mentioned, my name is Kurt Mullenmeyer. I'm Director of Public Works. I also want to go ahead and introduce two of my colleagues that are with us tonight. So Deputy Director of Transportation Mobility, Ms. Carly Campuzano, and Deputy Director of Project Delivery, Ms. Cindy Collo. So I'm going to go through these projects relatively quickly. There is time at the end for questions, but also as Jesse leads you into the ranking portion of this, if you have further questions, come ask us. We're happy to talk and answer any questions that you have. So 15 projects. First one up is the 13th Avenue Multimodal and Safety Improvements Project. So this is looking at the corridor of 13th Avenue from Potomac all the way to Yosemite, but you can see there's a 1 mile focus area which stops it at Peoria. And so this is going to add, and you're going to hear the word multimodal several times through this presentation. What we're talking about is improving transportation for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. Multimodal. So that's what this does. It's a $25 million for the entire corridor. For the 1 mile focus area from Peoria to Potomac, it's $6.5 million in Ward 1. It's also already in design, thanks to the grants that Laura had previously referenced. So these are construction funds that we're requesting. The second one is ADA barrier removal. And so just for information, there are approximately 27,000 curb ramps in the city, 1,700 miles of sidewalks, and about 2,000 pedestrian push buttons. Many of those were built prior to 2010 when the new ADA standards kicked in, so they're currently outdated, do not meet current ADA standards. So this project would upgrade all of that infrastructure to current standards and would supply funds to ADA initiatives with some of these other projects, including street paving, which we already do. And that is $38.2 million, that's project 1B. So the Alameda Bridge over 225 is a very, very busy corridor. It's right by the Aurora Municipal Center. So this bridge was built 1969. Our bridges are we have almost 100 bridges, as Laura mentioned. All of these are inspected every 2 years. So this bridge is relatively old. You can see some of the issues that we're having, cracking, narrow sidewalks. It's just starting to show signs of its age. And so also in design, thanks to our grant funds, and the $45 million request is construction funds to replace this bridge. So complete streets projects. When we say complete streets, we're talking about, as you can see in some of the photos there, adding lanes that don't exist, adding sidewalks where they don't exist. And these are small projects spread across multiple wards, wards 1, 2, 4, and 6. $14 to $17 million. We like to consider these projects small, but very impactful projects. The next one. So if you live in this area, this one's probably going to be very near and dear to your
Everybody
heart.
except the mayor.
It's still in a run.
So Gun Club Road, south of Quincy. So this would widen the current 2-lane configuration to a 4-lane configuration. It's also in design thanks to grant funds. And Recent studies that we've done show that this road currently carries 2.5 times the traffic that it was designed to carry. So the widening portion of this is very much needed. So high priority missing sidewalks. So we already have this as an ongoing program where we go in to areas where sidewalks do not exist, right? It's to improve pedestrian access. And high priority is determined by typically its proximity to commercial, transit, certain areas where you're going to have high pedestrian traffic. So there are literally hundreds and hundreds of locations that don't have sidewalks, thousands and thousands of feet of missing sidewalk. These are just the high priority areas that we've identified. And so it's across multiple wards, 10 locations for the high priority, and it's a $6 million request. So intersection safety and traffic calming. So traffic calming is a frequent request that we get, right? It's mostly in neighborhoods. People request speeding and want something done from an engineering standpoint. And typically what we're getting about 30 of these a year, and with the budget that we have, we're able to address 10 to 15. 10 to 15 of those, it's usually the lower cost ones. So the speed cushions, the radar feedback signs. So this project is going to fund roundabouts. Roundabouts are more expensive. They're also more effective. And it'll allow us to backfill and complete the projects that we're not able to do currently with the budget that we have. Across multiple wards, again, 15 million. So Montview, this is on the Fitzsimmons campus. So this is, again, a multimodal project. It's addressing pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles. Again, this project, the design is complete. We did do a request for bond funds to do construction. We were unsuccessful and are working on submitting another request, but it's a $35 million upgrade to this particular corridor where you have lots of people walking, biking, driving because of the Fitzsimmons campus. So the Northwest Aurora Alley Paving Program. So this is a Ward 1 initiative. There's a lot of alleys in Ward 1, so there's almost 300 alleys total. We've paved 2/3 of those and 1/3 remain. And at the current budget that we have, it's going to take us around 30 years to complete the paving of the remaining alleys. So this would accelerate that. We get this work done in 10 years and have all of the alleys paved in Ward 1. So the Peoria Bridge, I mentioned the Alameda Bridge. So this bridge is actually older. This is a 1960 bridge. This is the worst rated bridge in the city of Aurora. Not only is it old and been in place for a long time, it's considered functionally obsolete because it's a 4-lane bridge with a 6-lane road on both sides of it. So
I
it's
take
choke
offense to that because I'm actually 1 year older than this. And you said it's old.
That's in bridge years.
Bridge years. Completely different topic.
Very good answer.
So this is a Ward 1 project. It's a $35 million request. The design is also in process right now thanks to grant funding. But this $35 million is construction funding. Another popular one for the folks in this area is the northern portion of Gun Club. And this road is kind of an odd one. It's technically a CDOT roadway at the moment. And it starts as State Highway 30 or 6th Avenue, transitions into Gun Club, all the way down to Yale, from Airport to Yale. So this is a big number. I realize 168 million's a lot of money, but this takes a current 2-lane configuration and makes it a 4-lane configuration. This is a highly congested and traveled area of the city, as many of you probably know. And so there's also early action improvements listed there. Those are intersection improvements, traffic signal improvements, things to eliminate some of the congestion without the full expense of the 4-lane widening. Signal sign marking and lighting maintenance. So as Laura mentioned earlier, we have almost 400 traffic signals in the city. Many of those were installed many years ago, 20, 30 years ago. And they need to be maintained, replaced, components of those replaced. Same with the lighting, the markings, and our street signs, all of that. This is all addressing deferred maintenance in our city. It's a $8 million ask, and it spans all wards in the city. So a Tower Road extension, so this is 6 to Colfax, so there's currently not a road here. And this would really help access to and from the Buckley base. Instead of using some of the other roads east and west of this area. And then it kind of coincides with the next slide, which is another Tower Road one. But it's a $71 million to design and build. This one is not designed yet, as some of the others are. So Tower Road widening. So this road does exist, similar to Gun Club. This is a 2-lane cross section in here. This widens the roadway to a 4-lane. You can see the proximity to I-70 there. Heavily congested with truck traffic in this area. A lot of vehicles use this section of roadway. It's vastly undersized for the amount of traffic that it currently covers. It's a $13 million request. And again, it's not designed, so that's design and construction costs. So this is the last one, traffic safety and technology. So again, all wards, 22 million. This also addresses those 400 traffic signals that we have. Technology has advanced greatly in the realm of traffic signals, and there's a lot of things that can be done with traffic signals to address congestion, to address pedestrian safety. And all of this is what this particular project would address. Again, all wards, $22 million. And that, I believe, concludes the overview. So happy to take questions from anybody. Yes, sir.
Just thinking about all the projects that you put out, even though you've got some that are ready to go, red shovel ready, was there a priority thought to like what was safety first? What's the most important? Like I always look at ADA and I just always think that's first.
Sure.
Versus others. So could you explain that criteria?
Sure. So I absolutely should have mentioned this early on. So these 15 projects are not all of our projects. These are the projects that have gone through our prioritization process. And we're looking at a multitude of things, safety being paramount, absolutely. And some of these projects are directly tied to safety. Some, maybe not as much, but the bulk majority of these projects are safety with safety. Yes, sir.
I think it was, excuse me, in October, November, I was attending a town hall for Angela Johnson. And I think the lady in green, I didn't catch her name.
It was me.
Was that you?
Charlie, yeah.
And I had I'm on a budget committee, and we've done a lot of look at a traffic management system. And the young lady had mentioned that, and I may have the words wrong, that we had SMART, that they talk to one another. And when we did the review of the traffic management system, what we needed, they're not smart, they're dumb. And I did not have an opportunity to talk to you. You screwed out early. I think there was a football game, a basketball game, or something you wanted to catch, which is all right. But I just want to make sure that I did not hear that incorrectly, that we really don't have traffic lights that talk to one another and would monitor traffic the way, for example, you get in Denver and Broadway.
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. I'm Carly. I'm a Deputy Director of Transportation and Mobility, so definitely involved a lot on the traffic side, and I've done some traffic and transportation presentations that might have been during the World Series, in my defense. I'm from LA, and the Dodgers were really great. That wasn't your question, but
that said I'm a #1 fan.
I included, I think, Dodger trivia in that presentation, which everyone hated. So if it was that one, I'm really sorry. No, hopefully it wasn't. Okay, thumbs down. Okay, I won't mention that ever again. Yeah, on the technology side, so we do have one grant currently to make a traffic management center at one of our existing facilities. So I think that is going to help advance us a lot. We have a facility where our traffic signal techs are, and a lot of our data is already coming back, but in kind of different people's offices and on different monitors. And our grant funding from the Denver Regional Council of Governments, or Dr. Cog, is going to help us convert that into more of a traffic management center where we can use that data and make real-time decisions. But going to the communications network, our signals, for traffic signal systems, we want the signals to be able to communicate to each other and then communicate back to us. And so right now we're doing that with radios. If you see those big white circles, we get a lot of questions asking what those are, so they clearly stand out to people. But right now we're using those radios. The technology project Kurt mentioned will actually include some fiber along Gun Club.
You talk to them.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk to them and say, yeah, we're on and we're working, as
Yeah.
opposed to, yeah, we're on, we're working, and we need to extend the green or red lights for traffic congestion.
Yeah.
That was the concern. That was what we had proposed city council several years ago,
Mhm.
beginning to look at that. And that's what I'm looking, the fact that you can talk to them, they're off and on, that's good. But it didn't solve, what we saw was a congestion problem.
Mhm.
And so my question is, they cannot regulate red light, green light currently?
We currently do talk to the traffic signals. We only have connectivity to about 2/3 of them, but they still have detection. But some of the technology project that Kurt mentioned will help upgrade, use newer technology, use much better sensors for the traffic signals to react to real-time traffic more efficiently. And then it includes some better communications infrastructure along Gun Club, so it will help.
Some of that right now.
Yes, we've been working on addressing some of it with different funding, internal and grant funding, but this will help move us forward with that as
We're
well.
looking at a comprehensive program. We had the building, the
Mhm.
software, and the lights.
Yeah,
And and it's not sexy. I mean, you know, you build this nice recreational center, and it's nice to stand in front, take a picture, of a kid
Mhm.
playing basketball. You don't want to see a city council member hug a traffic light. Unless-
Councilmember Bergen has been at some good groundbreakings actually for these.
Yeah,
All right.
I love
Good.
those.
I agree, but thank you for the question, appreciate it. Other questions?
Yes.
To what degree would the multimodal projects be kind of like test projects? I mean, a lot of people in this room probably don't live near 13th Avenue. They're gonna say, sure, it'd be nice for those kids to walk back to school, but that doesn't help me here. But if that is implemented and deemed successful, would that lead to us saying, hey, let's do more of those across other boards?
I think they definitely could. I think some of the projects are, have kind of some of the more fundamental elements that people need in a transportation system, like widened sidewalks and things like that. But then I would say that the Montview project has a separated bike lane that's more like a side of the sidewalk, which would be new for Aurora. And I think if that works well and is well received, it could definitely be something we look at in other places. So I think yes, but also going back to the basics of some of those things we're missing. And you, anything to add?
Cindy Collett, Deputy Director of Project Delivery. Kurt also showed the Complete Streets projects. And what we're doing with those is we have sections of the city where half the street is missing and there's only sidewalk on one side. So what we really, our goal there is to get the street section where it needs to be, but also repurpose those lanes for multimodal. So it could be parking on both sides, separated bike lanes on both sides, maybe a shared path off street. So we're really looking at that. So even though 13th Avenue we would have to do in segments, the Complete Streets projects also address the multimodal.
Others? Yes?
Hi. A couple questions. First, thanks for being here. Can you please speak to what deferred maintenance is and why that gets its own project proposal? And two, who do I talk to about the wonky, weird bike lane at Del Mar and Peoria?
That's me.
Do you want to take a stab at the deferred maintenance?
Yeah, I'll do. So the deferred maintenance is related more to traffic items, at least the one we have proposed here as a project. As Laura and Kurt covered, we have caught up a lot on our deferred maintenance for pavement, which is really great. But we haven't necessarily done the same for our traffic signals and some of our traffic signs and things. And so for signals, sometimes they'll be really poorly rated, and we inspect them all on a 5-year rolling basis, but if they have a really poor rating, our structural engineers might say, ooh, you should replace this, or you should re-inspect it every 12 months or 6 months. So that item replaces some of the infrastructure that's rated so poorly. We have to re-inspect it every 6 months to make sure it's not too damaged, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then I'll give you my contact for the bike lanes. Yeah.
First, you know that the roster of the Dodgers is about to.
Great point. That is a great point.
Some of that money here, we want some of the Dodgers. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we're not necessarily, I know the projects are here, but there are some, I will say, geopolitical type projects, one being the Tower Road extension. I mean, can somebody explain what the the Buckley Space Force Base view is and what the tie-in and what they've asked for? And I know that's kind of gone through different things at the chamber and et cetera.
Well, that's a great question. When Buckley Space Force Base does maneuvers, they either have to go east or west and take a different route. So what the project would do would make the access to and from the Space Force Base easier, but safer probably for some of those maneuvers. We are just beginning discussions with them. One of the things with the projects that we have is a lot of times you actually have to get them on the state list so that they will consider a project in the future. So we actually just got that listed on the regional transportation plan, not the unfiscally constrained version, obviously, so that we can begin those discussions, because both airport and chambers, airport and tower, sorry. Airport, both east and west of there is pretty congested, so trying to give some better route and relief.
Yeah, and then finally, I only vote for Ward 6 projects for Xbox.
She's not kidding.
I hear about it almost weekly on what's not right in certain areas.
In this list of capital projects,
Yes.
we're talking about what Aurora's funding. And you talk to some of these list properties that are not, they're currently CDOT, or where others have interest as well.
Sure.
And the Space Force Base might be one of those. Is this list proposing that Aurora funds these totally, or are some of these where the funding is shared with other agencies, other interested parties?
I think it depends on the project, but certainly with some of these projects, Gun Club as an example, right? We're hoping to partner with CDOT to some degree, and hopefully, them come to the table and partner with us to help fund that. What degree that is undetermined at this point. Same with Alameda over 225. That's a CDOT bridge. But if we allow that to go through CDOT's processes, we're going to be waiting for that bridge to be replaced a long time. So we're trying to accelerate it. That doesn't mean they won't be our partners and to help us facilitate it, fund it. It's just not determined at this point. So it depends on the project, but yes, to answer your question, there will be external partners.
Yeah. I mean, you made an excellent point about CDOT, and we have tried to get them to partner with us on, what is it, Highway 30?
Yes.
Correct.
Gun Club,
Yep.
and obviously the one by Buckley is state highway as well, and it has not gone well over probably decades. We are talking to them. I will just say that even if, let's say, these end up being a priority and somehow down the road we get a chunk of money from CDOT to help on those projects, it would actually just offset our other projects. So, I mean, either way, we're going to certainly try to get those, to get that partnership and to get some monies from CDOT. And if we do, it just offsets so that we can actually do more projects. I don't know if that helps. But.
So our participation in what might be other people's projects, our interest is that it accelerates the project, that
Yes.
otherwise wouldn't happen. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Well, then, you're getting more bang for your buck if we're still getting participation from other agencies.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
To go back to the tower, to go back to the tower road lighting here, yeah.
There's two. I can bring them up if you want me to clarify in there.
Sorry, the expansion, or extension. Has an environmental impact study been done? We ride the trails through there, so there's a lot of wildlife, there's forest properties and all sorts of things back there that.
Right, and we would be required to do that, and it has not started. It is literally it's that
It's a
red,
concept.
it's this
Yeah,
one.
it's, yeah.
It is this, these dotted lines. So, just trying to think for the future, to relieve congestion.
Yes.
The high priority missing sidewalks, does that include the west side of Potomac and Colfax?
We have a list, we can check.
Yeah, I can touch base with you after this.
Yeah, well, let us look into that one. Mayor?
Didn't the city some time ago apply for a Defense Department grant? Because I think there is a Defense Department program on access into DoD facilities, but I don't know what happened there.
We did look into that. I don't think,
It didn't
I don't-
move forward.
it just didn't move.
They,
Yeah, I
they
can't
used
remember.
it for a different,
A different project.
they took that opportunity and used it for a different project that might have been associated with schools.
But if we could just double check on the DoD program.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yep.
So, along the lines of partnering with other agencies for funding the gun club between, what was it, Quincy to Aurora Parkway?
Yes.
Would that fall under, or would you partner with the Syria? Is that
Syria.
Regional,
Southeast,
the mill-
yeah,
the
southeast,
mill-
yeah.
would that help fund a gun club between Quincy?
And it is identified as one of their top projects. They have a couple projects that are superseding the gun club one. So they went out to the bond market and financed for, I think, Aurora Parkway and Gartrell Bridge. But gun club is like under that. I think it's the third one. So obviously, they would have to go probably out to the bond market again. For those of you who live in southeast Aurora and particularly in a metro district, you may be paying a mill levy through Syria, which would be embedded in your metro district tax, property tax. You wouldn't see it as a separate item, but the way it was set up, there was never enough money coming in to ever really fund all the projects on the project list. So we have completed a couple projects from that funding, but it definitely is a source that we will partner with as well. But it's honestly, to get to that point, we're talking many, many years away to accumulate enough funding from that tax revenue. So that's why, again, like we mentioned earlier, any of these partnerships that we are able to cobble together will offset some of our other projects.
And there is $4 million from the recent salary bond, at $4 million for gun club from Quincy to Aurora.
Well, it's not full now.
Yeah, I think it's still there,
No.
isn't it, Cindy?
I believe it is for now, and then
But what's actually available?
I believe that's the right number. I think originally we were thinking it was 1.7,
Oh,
and now
that's
it
what I'm
has gone up.
remembering.
Yep,
Yeah.
so it now is for, and then leaving the money in the Syria fund will allow us to gain more interest to waterfall to the Gun Club Road project.
And any savings.
And any savings, because we love savings.
Sir?
This may be better directed to Laura, and so I have a couple of premises for my question. So I just want to make sure that I have Aurora's looking to the voters to vote on bond or build up Aurora. That's the ultimate goal, is it's going to go to the voters and to fund the projects on build up Aurora.
That is a tool that our infrastructure task force will be looking at and making a recommendation on.
Okay. Then build up Aurora includes not only the infrastructure, but it also includes the library, cultural,
Correct.
and public safety.
Yes.
Okay. So you're looking at those three areas that are going to require money as a bundle that you're going to seek either a bond for or some other mechanism to fund all of those. For example, what if you only have enough money, what if you happen to have $568 million that you have for transportation? Does that mean that the libraries and cultural and public safety don't not get any of the money? Or you reallocate priorities and criterias for the funding?
So let's start globally.
Yes.
A little bit. So 10-year capital plan. Every city typically has a capital plan. And that serves as a roadmap for the needs that the city invests in. And that investment can come from a multiple number of sources. It can come from the annual budget. It can come from grants. It can come from bonds. It can come from certificates of participation, which is a tool we used. So we are in front of you today with our 10-year capital plan that could be funded from, again, multiple sources. The priorities piece, that conversation across 5 areas: parks, transportation, libraries, arts and culture, public safety, and other city facilities. Those priorities will pull forward to the infrastructure task force for them to review financial tools, one of which could be a proposed bond.
So
But going into the,
priorities, right? And then they're gonna look over our priorities
yes,
and then set them up, and maybe 2 safety, 1 library, 1 cultural, and 4 infrastructure.
it could be, because most important, remember, bonds have to be voted on, which you mentioned. And so you want to, if you use a bond as a tool, you need to ensure that the public will support the projects that are being proposed, and that the public sees those as the top priorities as well.
And being around long enough and being on a budget committee and seeing 3 bonds die when they should not have died. Because
This is why we're doing all this.
Right. But you needed city council support, and you needed the people support, and you needed to show what they were used for. And we don't have Greg Galinsky around anymore to beat up bonds and voters for voting, because we haven't had a bond
Long time.
increase, yes.
Yeah.
And that group is gone. And so by having it focused and understanding would be whatever campaign you would have for the people would be important to get these through. And the presentation that the gentleman presented with regard to the problem with the road and widening, that's significant. And in the past, that has not been done. So, I mean, I would like to see whatever it takes to inform the citizens of Aurora. Anybody who goes on Glen Club Road or the bridge, they would know exactly what you're talking about and they'd be for it. So those are just.
Thank you.
Talking about the ballot question you were talking about, so in 2000, I think I mentioned this to Laura before, so in 2000 there was ballot questions, 4 different ballot questions on different parts. And I think this Build Up Aurora should have different questions for different areas, like questions for transportation, question for public safety, question for pros. Because then the voters can pick and choose, or no, yes or no, on each area of the infrastructure that is needed. So I don't think they should all be lumped up into one. I think they should be broken up.
And there are legal requirements.
Yeah.
So the IRS and so you have to be very careful about what projects you package together, how you ask the question, and yeah, very important. Thank you.
Just make a point, if this does go to the ballot, I mean, your point is well taken. You really want to make sure you have buy-in from the entire city. So if all the projects that ended up being, prioritized to go on the ballot let's say they were all just Ward 3 and nobody else, you're not going to get voter participation to actually approve it. Everyone has to feel like I got something out of it. So I think that's.
Except we only vote Ward 6.
How many times can we vote?
That's a good segue. With all seriousness, if there are additional questions, we just want to keep you guys on time. Feel free to catch me. We've got the whole Congress team tonight here to support you guys as you go through the next phase of prioritization.
That's great.
All right.
Fantastic. Yeah. Is this on? It doesn't sound like it's on. Is it? Okay. Yes, what the people want does matter. My name is Jesse, and I'm your facilitator for this evening. I know a number of you have been to several of these sessions for Build Up Aurora, so thank you for showing up for this one. And if this is your first Build Up Aurora session, we're glad to see you. We're glad to see all of you. I call myself a neutral facilitator, and what that means is that I'm actually not connected or affiliated with any of these wonderful projects. My main goal is to be able to listen and hear all of you and understand your perspectives. And for those of you that have been through a couple of these sessions already, I could probably hand you the mic and you could get up here and do this. But one of the things that I've observed over these 6 sessions is that there is a mental shift that happens with the residents in attendance from the Q&A to this portion of the evening. We all are kind of conditioned, right, to ask questions of our subject matter experts because they're so knowledgeable and they're up here giving presentations on very consequential projects. And all of you had very thoughtful questions that I was listening to as I was sitting there in the back. But this portion of the evening then becomes more about all of you as the subject matter experts, because you are the ones that know what is needed within your neighborhoods and your communities. And so this portion of the evening is less about you asking the questions and more about you making the recommendations, you giving the input, you sharing your ideas. And one of the things that I would say is if you have a concern, let's think about how to frame it as a recommendation, or what you think the solution would be, what you see in your neighborhood or your community that needs to be addressed when it comes to safety, transportation, those types of topics. So we're going to go through a few different sections of the engagement this evening with all of you. We've got a ranking exercise that we're going to jump into here in just a moment. And for those of you that lean a little bit more introverted, we also have these questionnaires that are at each of your table. There's 4 different questions that you'll each have a chance to respond to in writing. And then we're also going to have a bit of a group conversation, a group dialogue, because we want to hear your voice. We want to understand your perspective on all of these different topics. And so that is actually one of the portions of the evening where we get to really converse with each other and understand how aligned or not we are with these projects, or if there's other projects that you feel should be focused on within the transportation focus area. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the ranking exercise. So for those of you that have been to these sessions before, you're probably already familiar with these instructions, but I will give them to you again especially for those of you that this is your first session. At your table you have colored dots, and there is a ranking that we use with these colored dots. There's 5 different colors, and each color corresponds to a ranking that you have in your mind when it comes to the projects that you just received. So the projects that you received are also mirror image over here in the back of the room, up on these poster sheets. And so I want you to reflect on, out of those projects, what are the ones that are your top 5 priorities? The ones that you think are the most important. Each of you might have different reasons for why you think that those projects are important, or different rationales for how you judge which ones are important, and that's completely fine. But each dot will correspond to the following ranking for yourself. So red dots are your number 1 priority. I see a lot of head nods, which is good. Blue dots are your number 2 priority. Green dots are your 3rd ranked priority. Pink dots are your 4th ranked. And teal dots are your 5th ranked priority. So once you have in mind the 5 projects that you want to rank order in using those dots, you will get up and you will go to the back of the room and you will find that project. So if project XYZ is your top ranked project, you will place a red dot on that project. If project ABC is your 2nd ranked project, you will place a blue dot, and so forth, all the way to teal. And if you have any kind of color blindness, come on over and I'll help you out. And so you'll go up, you'll have about 10 minutes to place your dots on different poster sheets, ranked order from 1 to 5, and then you'll return to your seat, and we're going to have some further instruction around some of the written responses before we jump into our group dialogue. But this will help us in terms of understanding what the room's view is with respect to each of these projects and how you're thinking and ranking them. Are there any questions around the instructions? Ready, steady, go? All right, I see a lot of confidence in the room. That looks good. Thank you.
So I guess I won't. Don't worry, I won't make then any town hall presentations.
When I first got on the board, they made a decision. I was the only
Original guy. Or gangster. Also, yeah. Oh, that's right. I know that's right. That's right. We were all Daves. There was only one of us that just didn't get along with. Sorry, that was. I didn't get it. We don't sometimes don't get Christmas berries. Phone will not go through. These are all these stories.
Yeah, she didn't know this is the transportation.
All right, we'll give it about 1 more minute to place your dots, and then we'll ask everybody to return to their seats.
All right, let's have everybody return to their seats, please. We have another section that we're going to walk everybody through. If we can get everybody back in their seats, that'd be great. Thank you. There's a 4-question questionnaire here on your table, and we're going to give you 10 minutes to be able to write in your responses to each of these questions. And just to read these questions out loud, they are, the first one being, please describe your thoughts about each of the capital projects you ranked with colored dots as to why and or how you ranked them. 2 is, do the capital projects detailed in the presentation reflect the needs you see in your Aurora neighborhood and or citywide for transportation? Number 3 is, can you explain how they do or do not reflect those needs? And the last and fourth question is, are there any capital projects within transportation that were not presented that you think needs prioritization from the city of Aurora? And if so, what are they? We'll give you 10 minutes to write your responses to those questions, and then we'll come back together for a group discussion.
myself in here. I was trying to go around and I don't know.
Give it a couple more minutes.
Oh, yeah. B-size, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there's 30, I don't use them for the purpose, yeah, that's fine.
You will.
She's got
All right, why don't we bring everybody back? If I can get everyone's attention.
Yeah, actually.
We're going to start our group conversation, our group dialogue. So each of you just had a chance to provide some written responses to a questionnaire that you have at your table. So to kick things off, can I just ask the group, what were some initial thoughts that you had when you received the presentation? What were your initial thoughts on these projects? What kind of first came to mind for you as you were listening to each of these projects?
For some of them, it's about time.
So some of them it's about time. Show of hands, how many of you might feel that way? Okay, looks like you got most of the room there with you on that. So I interpret your comment as that some of these projects have been long awaiting to be completed and that the city's in desperate need maybe of them being done?
Yeah.
Okay. What were some other initial thoughts? Yes.
I don't think there was anything on there that was a bad idea.
Okay.
But I mean, I was relatively easy to rank them, but it was still like, all of these would be good things to do.
So it seemed like these were fairly reasonable projects, and that you did see a need for them within the community.
You know, I was a little concerned about some of the larger capital items.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sort of the, yeah, okay.
What were there any like larger projects in particular that you were concerned about, and what kind of concerns did you have around them?
Well, I shared them earlier, you know, taking projects over that might not really belong to us as a city, and maybe, and focus, generally I would focus more on maintenance than new build.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you're right, there's been an overdue, there's a gap in maintenance, and that should be addressed. And safety, particularly people who are more vulnerable, and I would say ADA and bicyclists, even though I am not a bicyclist. No one should die because of infrastructure.
So it sounds like, to your first comment, it's like, let's take care of the things that we already have in terms of the maintenance piece and how important that is. And that has been a comment that we've actually heard in some other Build Up Aurora sessions. And so that rang true for you.
Oh, very much.
And then also just the safety concerns that are occurring within some of these projects that they would be able to address, as well as the awareness around ADA, which is also just critical, making sure that we have accessibility and safety for people who have disabilities and really just the broader general public, and that those seemed really important to you as you were kind of listening to the presentation. Got it. What were some other initial thoughts that the group had? Yes.
Having started with the original community engagement group and kind of went through the first little meeting, I think it was last January-ish, don't quote me on that. And then I went to 3 or 4 of those different sessions and different topics at different times. And what it came out to with the infrastructure committee and them being so thoughtful of putting just this together when there's not a bad idea is really commendable. It's finally time for the city to, we're doing the right things, and staff has, I know, worked very hard. And I know they struggle because they want to do so much. And they know the city is something special at its new kind of population, and so to come back out to citizens and try to explain all that, it's tough on staff. That's the first thing I thought of, but it's been very thoughtful in the process.
Well, I think that's probably appreciated by all of us as staff. That's kind of the second or third comment that I've heard around that these seem to be thoughtful projects or reasonable projects. I'm curious, how many of you wish that you had been able, if you had been given the opportunity to rank your top 10, you would have ranked some of these other ones as also important within your neighborhood.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
but my concern is some of these projects won't be done quick enough. For example, the Peoria Sand Creek Bridge, which was one of the, along with the traffic management, was one we had talked about 5 years ago, and we were told it was going to crumble. And so I make sure I don't drive on that bridge. And so here we are 5 years later, and it's still on the list to be repaired. And it was, dire straits back then. So that concerns me. If the bridge collapsed, and luck will have it, you'll have a school bus on there. And a couple of nuns, and they're going to go. and now
wow.
That's going to be
like that
tough PR to get around.
And those are real concerns, right? And as you were thinking about your ranking of your projects, was that safety? Was that what influenced you in your ranking, or was there a different type of thinking that you had?
No, and the thing, a safety and need, and that was the safety, and need was based on how long these projects have been around. We've talked about like the widening of Gun Club Road, and the number one bitch about that road and the people who live there, and it's been going on for so long, is so that's a need because how long it's been around. Safety is the need to get that resolved so that the bridge doesn't collapse and people die or get hurt.
And then get killed. How many of you, show of hands, how many of you in here was safety really influential in terms of how you were thinking about your ranking of these projects? Okay, so many of you.
To add to what he said,
Yeah.
I put the 2 bridge projects as my 1 and 2. So.
Well, and what's interesting is in some of these Build Up Aurora sessions, like for example the one last night, the ranking when you looked across all the poster sheets it varied a lot. There was not really one specific one, whereas this group, I did take note that the Gun Club Road actually received the most #1 red dots. So maybe not a surprise, but that is clearly a priority, and that actually also mirrors a lot of the feedback that we saw in the surveys and the other engagement we did through Build Up Aurora last year. Gun Club Road has always really elevated in level of importance. And all the different
keep that in mind because we're a much more intelligent group and really can focus on these projects.
Alameda Bridge was also the second one that received a lot of support from this room.
Yes.
We're talking about Gun Club Road. Does anybody want to talk about Alameda Bridge and why they ranked them as high as they did? Yes.
We live in Ward 1. I mean, I know it's not Ward 1, but we drive over that bridge all the time, and it's terrifying when you see people walking on that sidewalk that looks like it's this wide, and then there's that section that kind of juts out from 225 if you're going eastbound. We see cars clip that curb all the time because they're hauling ass to try to get off the highway. Yeah, I mean, say where we live, we see people almost get hit by cars all the time. So that's number one is better sidewalks and safer intersections.
Yeah, a lot of these capital projects you can see them and you can feel them in terms of their consequence and whether they've been updated or maintained or whether they actually pose a threat.
But I wanted to ask, there's a lot of talk about driving over the Peoria Bridge. I'm more concerned, what are the chances we're going to get beamed by a piece of concrete when we're riding our bikes under it?
We do under it all the time.
And they just paved that section of trail, so that's real nice. But, yeah, that's the worst part. We're going to go faster, I guess, now.
Yes. I do want to focus on that we don't want to do as much Q&A. We do want to focus on recommendations from all of you, but let's definitely respond to this one.
We do maintain that bridge, so get out there whenever things happen and work closely with CDOT. So there should be no pinging.
We invested in a lot of Jeffries.
I think I saw some other hands. Yes.
I'll give you a quick story about Alameda Bridge. The opening weekend of the In-N-Out Burger on Alameda Town Center. Because people were coming from out of town that may have never came on that bridge before. 3 accidents at about lunchtime. I think we were in that long line next to Macy's, but you could hear it, you could see it, and it was all because that design is outdated by 50 years. That's the problem.
That was a scary day.
Yes.
Scary day.
Life safety. I think of a couple of examples of major bridges that have had issues. The Twin Cities Bridge had that is well known. More recently, a bridge in Memphis that someone hit with a vehicle and was shut down for a year and a half. It was one of the 2 ways across the Mississippi in Memphis. That's the kind of thing you don't want to see. And preventive maintenance, which is what this is your way to avoid it. And I just don't think there's any excuse for not doing it.
So it's really clear that safety has played a huge role in terms of how people are ranking these in preventative safety, preventative maintenance. I actually want to ask these two tables up here. As you were thinking about the projects that you were ranking or the presentation you received, what were some thoughts that came about for yourselves? Yes.
Mine was definitely safety as well, but really from pedestrian safety. Not everybody has a car, not everybody can drive. Our kids, our youth, elderly people who had a drink, don't want to endanger people by getting behind the wheel, people with disabilities. So really anything, safety for people in cars has been improving the last couple decades. Safety for people outside of cars has been declining. So really anything that makes that safer. I want my kids to be able to walk to the library across the street without getting run over, and that's key for me. So those projects really do.
Prioritizing the pedestrian safety, people on bicycles, people that are not in vehicles. How many of you maybe thought of some of those kinds of concerns or needs when you were thinking about these projects? Or maybe how many of you have almost actually accidentally gotten hit by a car.
Have been hit.
You've been hit?
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So some of this isn't theoretical, some of this is experiential, right? Any other thoughts or feedback from when you were listening to the presentation? Yes?
The projects that would affect the most residents in the city were high on.
That was influential for you, is really where the big population, the largest number of people that would be affected the most by some of those projects, and you were thinking of it through that lens. Okay. Was that key for a few other folks as well? Sounds like a few other people. Did you have
No,
some?
I was looking at just Ward 6.
Bob, do you have something you wanted to share?
So I put a dot on the Alameda Bridge. It wasn't so much for safety as it was for the safety of pedestrians, because I do agree it's a high traffic area. A lot of people don't have vehicles in that area and walk to get there. The Peoria Bridge I didn't put a dot on because I don't think we'd be driving on that bridge if it was imminent failure, because your department and the state would never let us do that. So, I mean, as old as it is, I know it needs to be replaced, but I don't have any fear whatsoever of driving over it. And it's a bottleneck, but I believe there's still sidewalks. Isn't there sidewalks on the side? So
No.
you can still get by there on foot, and you can get on a bike. So anyway, that was some of the thoughts I put into it.
So you're thinking about the minimal safety standards that are already in place, but also just the dangers that can happen with pedestrians and other bicyclists that are nearby, and that was influential for you.
Yeah, and the Alameda rose higher for me because it's such a busy corridor for pedestrians.
Which kind of goes back to the comments around volume of people and how much some of these different projects are affected. Were there any other projects outside of the two that we've kind of been talking about that anybody wants to elevate or highlight for conversation that they think are important?
And I did put a dot on that Alameda Bridge. Just the traffic calming, because I get so many requests for traffic calming on residential roads to improve safety, especially by schools with the school children and so forth. And every year, you know, we get all these requests. We don't have enough money, and they are significant. Once they're done, they actually do help improve safety. And so I did. You know, I didn't rank it the highest, but I still ranked it.
And calming safety might not be one of those that always comes to front of mind for a lot of people. It's not a big, bold project, but it is one of those things that really creates safety in communities and addresses some of the concerns that we're hearing within this group. So appreciate the highlight of that. One of the questions that I tend to ask in these facilitations that I'm very curious, considering some of the comments that were made earlier about these being the right projects, were there any projects that were not presented within this transportation category that you think the city should be focused on, that you also feel should be a priority? And if so, can you describe those? Yes.
So I wrote down the traffic, the streets around the Stanley Marketplace. They're very narrow and one lane in each direction. I don't know how you would alleviate that, but there's going to be more redevelopment around there. And so it's not highly ranked in my mind, but it's something that a lot of people go to the Stanley Marketplace, I do all the time. It's just something that I notice all the time, just parking on both sides of the street, one lane in each direction. It's just a congestion.
Yeah, and that fits again with the theme of where the largest group of people are, and being aware of some of the safety concerns around the roadways there and sidewalks. And so you would not necessarily say it's your top, but you would say that is a project for consideration that the city should be thinking about. Yes.
And I had one, but I didn't mention it here because it might be on your smaller list, but there's in Traditions, there's I think it's 2nd Avenue against where a APS school site would be, and it's just dirt. So you got literally one lane in the one narrow lane, and cars go both directions on it. And I wonder if that was on the, finish the streets areas. Do you know where Traditions is?
Northeast?
It's Yeah, it's in between Adonia and Cross Creek.
Oh, is it first?
It might be
It is
first.
on the list. It's on the list. It's on the complete streets list.
And one of the things that I appreciate about what Kurt said earlier, and we are over time, so I'll keep us short here in our last question. But these are just the projects that were shared here this evening. But there's, I imagine, a very broad array of projects that the city is focused on. That sounds like it's not necessarily in the presentation, but a part of them. So appreciate you highlighting that. So one last question for the group, and then we'll get you on your way. How many of you, when you think about and reflect on your top 3 projects that you ranked, how many of you would support your top 3 projects if it was presented to you as a bond package? If you could show your hands, that would be helpful. Okay. How many of you would support your top 5, so your 4th and your 5th? That's actually a high number. Sometimes that last question, we see some hands go down. So it sounds like this group feels very strongly about your top 5. Got it. Okay. Any other last thoughts that the group wants to share about the projects that were presented tonight, or any of the priorities that you ranked? Yes.
My final thing is just talking about ADA compliance, and I think we should have during town halls just a thought process and sharing with the community and our citizens at all the different ward town halls, just because I want to know where we stood, where we're at, and where we're going. Because I've been on Capitol Hill plenty of times. I've sat in Representative Crow's office, and I can tell you one of his biggest complaints is how bad Aurora's, when you got wheelchairs going down Colfax, and those type of major corridors, because they feel like they can't be on a sidewalk with other people, and kind of that mitigation of ramps and things like that. I think it's a bigger deal than what we really talk about here in a growing city, and that's why it's in my top 5, because I've been to, you travel many cities and you see who's doing it very well, and you see who's not as quite up to par. And I don't know if it hurts us in the federal realm. I don't know if it hinders us from getting grants or other things, but I don't know, I'd like to see Aurora become a leader in that.
And when I listen to you, it almost sounds like, how can we use an ADA framework that goes over all the projects? Really thinking about how all of these projects are aware or utilizing ADA compliance best practices in ADA. I see you nodding. Does that sound like kind of what would, and just broader awareness is what I also hear you saying, between the public and the city on how we get there, what the goals are in getting there, and just understanding the importance of that.
Maybe Laura could address that, because we are doing a study on what the needs of the city are for ADA across all facilities and infrastructure.
Yeah, so the Department of Justice requires what's called a transition plan. So every city is required to have a long-term plan, and we're talking 25 years, that identifies recommendations for how to improve accessibility, both in infrastructure as well as operations and programs. And so we've undertaken a 2-year effort. We're in phase 2 right now of that, but phase 1 was actually public right-of-way. So curb ramps, sidewalks, push buttons, and did an inventory. So we are working through this in phases, and every phase ends with recommendations that come forward to City Council. There's a public hearing, but definitely happy to share any more information on that process with you.
So it sounds like there is really strong alignment between the city and what we're hearing here in the room around the importance of ADA. So I want to wrap things up just by thanking all of you for being here, being in this activity, helping us understand your thinking and how you're prioritizing and ranking these projects. We're very fortunate to have residents such as yourselves that are so engaged. So thanks so much. We greatly appreciate it.
And thank you to the staff. I've always been impressed being on different committees, the work they do, and the one thing that Aurora, despite different issues, is that if there's a problem, they see it. Enough, if there's a problem with Aurora, it isn't something that just came up that nobody thought about. They thought about it years ago and tried to deal with it. And I know friends and people involved in other cities and other political, that something comes up and they're totally surprised. And in the years that I've been working on the budget and stuff, there's never anything that came up as a surprise.
Thank you for that. So as we wrap up tonight, thank you all for your participation, for spending the evening with us, providing feedback. We do have an online survey. So this is our 6th meeting that we've had. So if you missed the parks meeting, or you missed the libraries, arts and culture meeting last night, you can go online, complete the survey, and provide us your top 5 ranking, answer some of the same questions that were asked today for the other areas as well. We want to hear from you, so please share with your neighbors, share with your friends, and get their feedback. Your input matters from today. We are taking this in. It will be presented to the Infrastructure Task Force. It will be utilized to inform the prioritization of our capital plan, as well as the Infrastructure Task Force's recommendations. We are planning another round of engagement in the next couple of months. More information to come on that. But the key website you need to know is this one, engageaurora.org/buildup. Please continue to follow here. Lots of great information shared here, as well as certainly keep you up with future efforts and future engagements. So thank you. I do want to acknowledge we have Rita Connerly in the back room. She's one of our members from the Infrastructure Task Force. She was here all evening listening to the conversation, taking it in. Thank you, Rita, for coming out tonight. As well as, I know Mayor Kaufman joined us as well. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Drive safe.